So Michaela and Antoniou from the University of Athens will be talking about screen acting and directing collaborative teaching. The floor is yours, Michaela, and
thank you very much, Evie. Thank you very much for inviting me to this great event. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Paul, for being the inspiration of those books. I want just to note that this is a recording of a work in progress that we are conducting with students from the University of Athens. And I'd like to start my presentation with a quote from Jim Carmody about how he's recording the way that a piece of work can be presented on film. So Carmody says, there are, however, some crucial differences between the auteur director in film and the auteur director in the theatre. Perhaps the most important of these differences arises in the different relationship the director has to the text, the play script, or the screenplay. The film director refashions the screenwriter's text at will, discarding, adding, or altering images, dialogue, even major events of the dramatic structure during pre-production, and to an extent that the screenwriter's work is often obliterated. Later, during post-production, the director reworks the raw footage with the editor and others, again discarding, adding, altering almost at will to make the finished film. Given the very often numerous changes, the interventions between the screenplay and the finished film, it is hardly surprising that film directors' work is not examined in terms of their interpretation of a text. So, I wanted to start from this idea that the work of film directors could be examined in terms of the interpretation of a text, namely that their finished product is something that can be read as a text. And within this framework, then perhaps one could say that we could use Stanislavski's concepts in order to structure this text. So this means that starting from a script for the screen, a film director could use through action as a valuable tool, which goes to the core of script analysis, connecting the dots and narrating a complete story. But also, and maybe more importantly, it can break down the narrated story into bits in order to clarify scenes, determine shots and takes, and also what is useful for the actors, help them with this process to respond to the fragmented process of filming. So this was the main idea when I structured the director's course, and it gave me the certainty that the two courses, acting and directing, could have a similar complementary structure. But let's start from the beginning. So the aim of my paper is to describe and analyze the educational process that is employed in the course Directing Actors in Film, taught at the Department of Digital Arts and Cinema of the National Capital University of Athens, in relation to the course Acting at the Department of the Theatre Studies of the same university. I will mostly focus today on the work conducting at the course Directing Actors in Film, as well as present the rationale behind the combined work that will ultimately be carried out by students of both courses. And because I need to stress at this moment that the semester has not yet finished in Greece, we have 3 more weeks of lessons, and this morning we just had the first meeting of student directors and with student actors. So, the Department of Digital Arts and Cinema was founded in 2019. It is a relatively new department, and this year it included for the first time in its curriculum the course Directing Actors in Film, a course which aims to give future cinema directors the tool to guide actors in front of the camera, but also to acquaint all students, that is, future directors of photography, sound engineers, sound designers, and so on, with the process an actor has to follow. Moreover, The way that I developed the course, it aims to provide future professionals of the screen with a directing process that will combine the narration of a story shot by a director and a filming crew, and which will incorporate in the storytelling the actor's performance. Of course, it comes as no surprise that the students of the cinema department had no knowledge whatsoever of the process that an actor follows. Thus, my first concern was to introduce them to key concepts of Stanislavski's work, but in a way that it would make sense to their work. So first, we worked on a scene from a play called Who Discovered America by Christa Spigliotti. It is a short scene, which is structured very much like a cinematographic scene, where two women meet and a revelation occurs, which alters the dynamic of the scene. On this simple but well-structured scene, I asked them to define the events and find the actions that they provoked, find the proposed circumstances. In order to do that, of course, I gave them a worksheet which posed the specific questions which you can imagine. So, who is in the scene? What is going on? Namely, what are the active facts? What is the problem of the scene? Where is the scene set? When is the scene set? With whom? So, what is the relationship of the characters on stage? Where does its character come from? Where do they want to go? Why? In order to clarify all the questions, we discussed what defined the proposed circumstances. We broke the scene down into beats, found the actions, which led to active verbs that moved each character. Then, in groups of twos, we used etudes to verify our findings, went back to discussion. So, in short, we followed a clear rehearsal process. Then each group was asked to create a short film that didn't capture the actors saying their lines, but defined their intentions through the different positions of the camera, the close-ups or wider shots, and so on. With this process, we aimed to help the student actors realize that there is a live interaction, that of the actor, which filters the words and the intended shots written on the page and the final product, the film. So in our fifth lessons, after we worked for quite a while, I asked them to bring their own scripts, because within their studies, they are asked to write scripts. And then I asked them to analyze them using what we have learned. All these questions help them review their own work. They realized that by posing those questions, they were able to gain an insight of their own work, understand anew the structure of their scene, the intention of its character. In short, the students were able to have a completely different approach to their text and discover new dynamics. So, for instance, by defining the proposed circumstances in a scene between two characters named after the Commedia dell'arte Colombina and Arlecchino, the conflict within the scene was illuminated when the characters' aims were put against the obstacle of a dying Scaramouche next door, and active verbs were used to define its characters' actions. The fact that Arlecchino was sexually rejecting Colombina and her agonizing effort to approach Arlecchino but failing was justified and ceased to be general, but became specific to the relationship between all three characters. Another thing that the directors found quite revealing was the fact that they didn't have to give instruction about the way that the scene should look, namely the outcome of the scene. Because initially they had the notion that in order to guide an actor, they had to define if an actor would have to cry or laugh in relation to what they had in mind about the way that the scene should be presented. What they actually found was that by explaining to an actor their concept of the scene, so giving them all the proposed circumstances, defining who's who, etc., they allowed the actors the ability to offer their own perspective. So the actor didn't have to cry when they were sad. but they could have the ability to offer their own creative ideas into the work. Moreover, this also led to choosing different ways of presenting the narration of the scene. So they would use, for instance, a close-up to a spoon that dropped on the table and create a specific sound, which indicated a change in the development of the scene. And it created also pause and tension. Then we moved on to the next stage, where they were all given the same text. It was a very simple text, which had only two characters whose gender was not defined. It was simply A and B. It had no punctuation, and everything, place, time, relationship between characters was open to discussion and was to be determined by the director and the actors.
3 minutes, please. 3 minutes, please.
3 minutes, fantastic.
You need to wrap up. Thank you.
So this was an exercise that made them realize that in a text, the subtext was more important than the actual words, and that the pronunciation of a word doesn't mean that it can transfer the meaning. Also, it enabled them to come up with a directorial concept and guide the actors. Okay. Simultaneously, the work at the Department of Theatre Studies was going on simultaneously, and when they met for the first time, they had a common vocabulary to collaborate. The aim for the directors was to be able to explain their concept on a work and to allow the actors to function creatively in front of the camera. So in today's lesson, which was the first interaction between actors and director, during the encounter, directors and actors discussed and decided together on the event and the proposed circumstances. I will go straight to the example, which is three directors worked with one actor on a monologue and came up with three slightly different proposed circumstances. The text was about a man who witnessed the suicide of another man and was talking about it to a silent observer, undefined if it is the police, a friend, or a journalist. The first director decided that he was talking to the police and wanted to capture the actor's entire body so that she could show his uneasiness and vulnerability, and used close-ups only as the scene progressed to show that he feels more threatened. The second decided it was a confession to a friend and shot mainly the actor's hands, legs, and back, trying to transmit the actor's pain and his intent to take some distance from the event. Finally, the third shot the entire scene in a close-up from an angle, again as a police interrogator who was accusing the actor. What is also indicative was that when the director told the actor that he had to keep in mind he was being threatened by the person questioning them, the actor replied, "So you mean that I have to prove to the interrogator that I'm innocent," referring to the action that he had to undertake. This was my presentation. I think I've concluded my time. This was a sum up of the educational process that we're taking in this classroom.
And let's move, if that is all right, to the next presentation, which is by